Alright, I'm Bill. I'm still here. There's Luke. Hang on. Is Roger Deans still alive? Roger Deans, are you still alive? Do you remember that promise that we made? It was about 1966, 76, 80, about 1984. What? No, about 1983 I think it was. Roger. Was Roger Deans still about? Is he still alive? I wonder. I wonder if Roger Dean's still alive. 1983. I made a promise. I said one day, when I've got time and I'm not busy, I'm going to burn all your skin off. I think that was the promise, wasn't it? One day when I've got time, I'm not busy, I'm going to burn all your skin off. Anyway, what are you up to these days? You having a good time? I hope so. I'm still me. The 8 bells swing in your head. This is Hatfield, right, Hertfordshire. Do you remember Hatfield? In 1980. Do you remember Hatfield School? Anyone alive who remembers Hatfield School? Everybody thinks they're so violent these days, don't they? They think they're so hard these days, the kids. Yeah. Hatfield School. Do you remember in the 1970s and 80s? Right, in the 1970s and 80s, well, basically 1980s, supposed to. 66 we were born. 76 is 10 years. So, yeah, about the 1980s. Yeah, about the 1980s. Who remembers 1980s? Hatfield School. Do you remember Hatfield School? Do you remember the chair fights we used to have? Paul Salou, Dan Barnes, Roger Deans, Bill Shirley, Steve Murray, he's still with us. Anybody else? We've forgotten half the world, but do you remember the chair fights in Hatfield School? We were in B2. It was the second year of the B. 66, 76, 80. Well, 1980s, 1981, 1982. Right. Do you remember we used to have the chair fights in school? Seriously, not joking. Everybody thinks they're so violent these days. They're fucking pussies. Everybody thinks they're so violent these days. They are pussies. Do you remember when we used to have 2 sides in our classroom? 2B or not 2B. There were 2B and not 2B in the 1980s. You know what I mean? And we used to have chairs, and we used to sort of like put the tables as barricades, and we used to throw chairs at each other. We actually used to sort of have chair fights. We used to have the most amazing chair fights. When I was at school, like Hatfield School, it was Hatfield School in the early 80s sort of thing. And we used to have chair fights in our classroom, you know, when the teachers weren't there, obviously. But we used to put the tables together, and we used to throw the chairs at each other. We were violent in the 80s, man. We were totally violent in the 80s. We used to have chair fights, you know, boys and girls, you know, one side, 2 sides. And we used to have chair fights, throw chairs at each other. You know what I mean? They're so innocent these days. Anyway, Luke, what do you want to say? Anything? Yeah, can I roll a joint and we'll have half a line? I'll have half a line. I'll have a bit of a wimp. I was born in 66. You know, I was born in 66, a long time ago. But yeah, we used to have chair fights at school. It was great fun. And stuff like that. Quite violent people. But anyway, yeah. So, I managed to wank my mate off every day. For about 5 years. When I was 14 years old. Chair fights were before. But I was 14 and I had a best mate at the time. But I used to wank each other off for about 5 years. No, yeah, for about 5 years. Basically every day after school I used to go with my mates. when I was a kid, right, when I was about 14, 15. But when I was 14, I went on holiday. I should tell you a true story. When I was 14, I went on holiday with my best friend, Andy. I went on holiday with my best friend, like, in my class. And we went down to Bournemouth, I think it was. Was it Plymouth? Well, somewhere down on the south coast. Anyway, yeah, our beds were sort of like head-to-head sort of thing. And I heard a chickering noise. I was about 14 years old. We were at his auntie's. I think it was his auntie's house. Pretty sure it was at his auntie's house. And we had a couple of beds sort of like head-to-head sort of thing. Chickering. Boom, 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 boom. I said, what are you doing? And Andy said, I'm wanking. I said, oh, right. Then Andy said, do you wank? I said, yeah, of course I fucking do. Do you come? Asked Andy. I said, what do you mean? I was only 14. I was only 14. I didn't really know what coming was. I'd never come. When I was 14, I hadn't come before. I'd never come. I'd wanked a bit, but I'd never come. So I'll tell you the story. So anyway, Andy said to me, do you want me to show you how? So I laid down on the carpet and he wanked me off and he kept wanking me and wanking me and wanking me. This was in 1980 actually, 1980. Same year John Lennon died and my best mate was wanking me off like. I said, I think I need to go to the toilet. He said, no you don't, Bill. And then I came for the first time. My best mate actually wanked me off for the first time. First time I really came was in 1980. When my best mate just wanked me off until I came. It took about half an hour, my dear. We were 14 years old. Said we were 14. Both of us were 14. When I first came, I was 14 years old. And my best mate wanked me off. Yeah, there's a historical fact. And we wanked each other for about 5. Well, we still do. Well, I haven't done for a while because we've moved away, but, you know. I said, first time I came was when my best mate wanked me off. And we wanked each other off for about 5 years or so, you know, when we were kids. When we were kids, when I was in my teenage years, like, you know, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. When I was in my teenage years in the 1980s, sort of thing, because I was born in 66, 66, 77, 80s, and the 1980s, I had a really, really fucking good buddy, man. My best mate, my buddy. Remember? And he wanked me off. We had wanked each other off every fucking day for about 5 years when I was a teenager. So when I was a fucking teenager, my mate used to wank me off every fucking day. And I don't know how because I'll talk about Hatfield, wasn't I? Yeah, Hatfield. Let's talk about Hatfield. You know there's all these boarded up shops, right? Look. Yeah. You know there's all these boarded up shops, just reminiscing. You know, there's boarded up shops and they're all empty. I was thinking, what would be a great idea would be to turn those shop units for free into things like art studios so that people could paint pictures. You know, with the free paint and all that. Yeah. They'd pay for it, I'd know. And you could have an art studio and one of the shop units and an art gallery at the front of the shop. You know, you'd have an art gallery, right? And behind the shop you could have an art studio. Art studio, so people could paint pictures in the art studio behind the shop and then sell them in the shop. Yeah, that'd be good for one shop. Another idea I had for the shops in Hatfield was like something like a dressing shop, like, you know, loads of cloth and whatever and stuff, and make dresses and stuff. You do that, or have a toy shop would be nice, or a book shop would be very nice. There's all these empty shops in Hatfield. A junk shop where people could sell their junk. Very good idea. Do you know? Hatfield's sort of like died for death in the town centre. Well, the shops have anyway. No denying that. There's nothing in the town centre. Let me fucking choice. I was going to tell a story about Hatfield. I said, It's all closed. I mean, they talk about things like regeneration of Hatfield Town Centre, don't they? Yeah? Look, you saw it? Oh yeah. They talk about this regeneration of Hatfield Town Centre. But all the shops are still closed. There's still about half a dozen shop units that are complete. Well, a dozen shop units completely closed, boarded up. I'm thinking, what would be a good idea? How about Hare Krishna? Have you ever tried Hare Krishna food, Luke?
I don't even know what that is now.
Hare Krishna. When I was in Australia, in Sydney, Australia, I lived in Australia for about a year. I lived in Sydney, Australia for about 6 months. But we had Hare Krishna restaurants. And what actually happened was the Hare Krishnas used to give free food to the travellers and the tramps and stuff, to the poor people in Australia, in Sydney, Australia. Every day we used to get loads of fucking mushy food, absolutely delicious, from the Hare Krishnas. Oh, I miss that food. I miss the Hare Krishna food. When I was in Australia, Sydney, Australia, I was in Australia in 1990. There was Doug Robertson, Tony, and Marcus and Ross, and we lived in this little room, one room. There was Tony, Marcus, Ross, and Doug. And Doug used to sit in the middle of the room stark naked. In 1990 Australia, Barncliffe Hostel. How many people remember the Barncliffe Hostel? 1990 Australia. I didn't have it on film, actually. Do you remember the Pink House, Barncliffe, Australia, 1990, when we were all tripping on LSD and shit? Yeah, we were all tripping on LSD, 1990, Barncliffe. And there's Doug Robertson sitting in the middle of the room, stark naked, singing his pagan songs. In fact, I've never actually heard. I miss your. Sorry, Doug Robertson. If you're still alive, I still want to hear your songs again. I couldn't record them at the time. But Doug Robertson was a fantastic musician and singer. And he sings songs stark naked in the middle of the room. We all used to share this one room. There was Doug Robertson, Marcus, who was a Kiwi from New Zealand. There was Ross, who was a sort of like Australian surfer boy, and Tony, who was a like white rasta dressed in red. You know what I mean? Anyway, storybooks. Yeah. We had quite good fun, tripping off our faces and everything. And we used to have Hare Krishna restaurant. There was a Hare Krishna food place like in Sydney, Australia, right? What would be a good idea is turn one of them empty shop units into a Hare Krishna restaurant so that people could get free food. You're hungry, you go down to Hare Krishna restaurant and they give you free food. We used to do that every day in Sydney, Australia. We used to go down to the Hare Krishnas at night, about 5 o'clock sort of thing. And Hare Krishnas used to give out free food for about an hour. You know what I mean? Hare Krishna restaurant in Hatfield would be nice. That'd be really nice, actually, a Hare Krishna restaurant in Hatfield. And maybe a dressmaking shop, and maybe studios where people can build and create what they want. Art studios as well would be nice. There's all these empty shop units in Hatfield, and I just think it's a waste of space to have a whole fucking town full of empty shop units. Do you know what I mean? Anything else you want to say? No, not really. I'm saying, if you all you're going to have for the next 10 years is this boarded up shops. Hatfield Town Centre, right? Most of it is boarded up, isn't it? You got charity shops, you got fucking charity shops, and you got charity shops in Hatfield, Hertfordshire. And you've got about 4 or 5 boarded up, well, got quite a lot of boarded up shops. Why don't you use those shop units? And you could give people the opportunity to make their own fucking shit. You could have an art gallery, an art studio. You know what I mean? An art studio. Because you know how expensive oil paints are. Very expensive. But you have an art studio and an art gallery all in one. And you have all sorts of things. A sweet shop, maybe. A bookshop. What about a bookshop? Or a record shop? Or a video shop?
Got a fucking library.
Or a library in it. No, you've got a library in it.
That's what I'm saying, why you don't need a bookshop. You've got a library.
Well, no, it's nice to have books, to buy books sometimes. But video libraries or... Everything's sort of like closed down, like, you know, I know it's all on computer these days.
Mm.
I miss bookshops. You can have a bookshop in Hatfield or...
You can download books free.
Records, I don't know. The whole world's gone completely boom, boom, boom. About an antique shop, and they could sell televisions. That's only old show. Alright, and Hatfield was done with nice people though, lovely people in Hatfield. A lot of people need jobs though. I'm going to create jobs for other people. I like to create jobs for people, like I'll say, like what you could. I'm not going to have you scrounging off me forever. What I do is say, like, let me create a job for you. What are you good at? What can you do? And you find out what people can do, and then you give them a job. You give people jobs that they can do. I mean, you can't do much if you well, you can do quite a lot with one hand, actually. I know one guy who used to work, who's working on the market, you know, putting up stalls, and he's only got one bloody hand. Some people do stuff. Do you know what I mean? Some people don't do anything, and it's the people who don't do anything that get on my tits. I do know one guy, Kieran. He works in the market sometimes. He's only got one hand. You know what I mean? He's only got one fucking hand. And he was putting up this market stall, I think, fucking hell, man. And there's other people who've got two hands and do nothing. You know, some people have two hands and they never do anything with their two hands. You know what I mean? You have to admire that, don't you? You know what I mean? I know one guy who got one hand does a lot, but other guys with two hands don't do anything. It's a crazy world. Anyway, Hatfield. Alright, Luke, can you sit in the chair and let's talk a bit? Make a picture, because you're looking a bit distant. Sit in the chair and let's talk about Hatfield. Alright then, what else happening in Hatfield? They had a festival yesterday, didn't they?
Yeah.
I'm not going to waste my fucking night. I was thinking of doing something, but anyway, Hatfield.